Marco and Pete and General Kane was so great. John Ratcliffe was incredible. We had an amazing array of talent, and we were helped by, in particular, the countries represented at this table. I will say, Tamim, you were fantastic, and your country's unbelievable, and I don't think they give you a fair shake. They talk about you as though you're not a nice person, and you happen to be a nice person. You happen to live in a little tough neighborhood. You're surrounded by everybody. And without you, this wouldn't have happened. And I just want to thank you very much. It's Qatar. And he's a great friend. He's an amazing leader. And another man who's been a friend of mine for a long time. I don't know what it is. I like the tough people better than I like the soft, easy ones. I don't know what the hell that is. It's a personality problem, I suspect. But this gentleman from a place called Turkey has one of the most powerful armies actually in the world. It's much more powerful than he even lets known. If you look at some of the recent conflicts, he was at the top of them and he was winning them, and he did win them. And he doesn't want any credits, he doesn't want anything, he just wants to be left alone. He's a tough cookie, but he's been my friend. And every time I've ever needed him, he's been there for me. So I just want to thank President Erdogan, Turkey. And they always have a problem with him because he is difficult. They call me, they said, would you do me a favor, could you speak to Erdogan? And I do, and he never fails us, right, General? He never fails. He's amazing. So I just want to thank you for the friendship. It's great. Thank you very much. And then, of course, we have the host tonight, and I just want to thank you very much. It was a reason we chose Egypt because you were very helpful, and very, very helpful. Everybody wanted to have this, but we really thought it was appropriate, and you are a great leader. We have very little crime. We have problems that other countries don't have, and of course, nothing's perfect, but the job you do is amazing, and I want to thank you. Another one, we've been my friend right from the beginning. During the campaign against crooked Hillary Clinton, have you heard of her? We were both downstairs waiting to go up to meet this gentleman who has a place called Egypt, the oldest civilization. They say 6,000 years. China is 5,000 years, but you're actually number one, 6,000 years. Can you believe it? But the oldest, they say, civilization. But so I went up to meet him first, and we liked each other so much that she waited for about an hour and a half. And I think your meeting lasted about 2 minutes with her. So I always remembered that. But that was our first meeting. We had great chemistry together. And he's a fantastic man and a fantastic general, by the way. But he's a great president. And I want to thank Egypt and all of your representatives for treating us all so well. Group of nations, and they're sitting behind us, and you know most of them. I can tell you this guy's got so much money. They all have so much money. There's more money and power sitting behind us. I love that they're behind us. They've never been sitting behind anybody before. This is a very unique position for them, but they are seriously, they're among the most powerful countries in the world, the richest countries in the world, and there's never been really an assemblage like what we have today. I don't think I've never seen it anyway. And I want to thank everybody for being with us. And man, I just solved the war for him. Azerbaijan. You guys doing a good job? Where did you come picture here? There he is. You guys are still getting along, right? We fought for 32 years, and about 1 hour we settled it, right? And they like each other now, too. It's good. That's great. Well, I want to thank everybody for being here. Italy, she's a very strong ruler. He's doing a great job. You're doing a great job. Thank you very much. So many, but we're actually going to be making a speech after this, so this is just a very important signing, but we're doing a signing, then we're doing a speech. And then I may stay behind with the leaders just to talk about that, some things without the press. I want to thank the media for you've been so respectful on this deal. You know the importance of the deal, and I really, it was so pleasant to watch. I was on the plane for quite a while listening to the various newscasts, and they were all fair. They were talking about how incredible this is. This is an incredible day for the world, let alone the Middle East. So I just wanted to thank the media. They really treated it with respect. I wish you could be like that on other things, but that's perhaps too much to ask for. But on this, tremendous, everybody feels the same. Just tremendous respect, and we appreciate it very much. Can we get the documents, please? Okay.
We'll send them right here.
Okay. Okay. This took 3,000 years to get to this point. Can you believe it? And it's going to hold up, too. It's going to hold up. Okay, thank you. You can use my pen if you want. Have a pen? Want to use mine? Okay. Okay. Okay.
You can hold it up for me.
Okay, fine. I think we're going to hold it up. I don't hold up the signature page, yeah. So we're going to go and I'm going to say a few words. We'll give you a little speech, and then we're going to meet with the leaders after that and spend a little time together without the media. The media is invited to the speech. I just want to tell you the people behind me and some of the people in the room that are so helpful, but the people behind me are the greatest leaders, most powerful leaders, the richest leaders, frankly. Sometimes it's not politically correct to say that, but I'll say it, the richest in the world that the world has ever seen. And yet when you get to know them, I know every one of them in their own way, and I can say in particular some, because that's the way life works, but some of the greatest people you'll ever meet, and people that really care for their countries. And why this happened is they all came together and they wanted to get Gaza straightened out. They wanted to get the whole thing straightened out. It got to a point where it was just crazy. And once they got together and once we started talking, it went really, Tamim, it went smoothly. It went so smoothly. You were such a big help, but it went so smoothly that nobody can even believe it, that we're sitting here and getting this all certified out and all done. And everybody's happy about it. Everybody's happy about it. Like I've never seen before, actually. I've done other deals, and people don't care as much. Big deals, I think they're big deals, but this is something that's taken off like a rocket ship. And it did from the beginning, and I've heard for years, this is the biggest deal, it'll never happen. For years, long before I ran for office, that this is the Middle East. It's the biggest, most complicated deal. And also it's the place that could lead to tremendous problems like World War III. They always talked about World War III would start in the Middle East. And that's not going to happen. We don't want it to start anywhere, actually, but it's not going to happen. So I just want to thank everybody, and I'll see you in a little while. And in particular, thank you all. Thank you, Tamim. Mr. General, thank you very much. Thank you very much. Great job. Great job. Thank you very much, everybody. Thank you. Okay.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم.
In the name of God, the gracious,
أصحاب
the most
الجلالة
merciful,
والفخامة
your
والسمو.
Kind of experience. He thinks outside the box. He touts himself for and takes praise, or excuse me, takes pride in the fact that he does that. It is why President Trump often refers to himself as the deal maker in chief, and that is a moniker that he certainly has earned here in getting to this first phase, David.
In addition to the significant praise for President Trump here on the ground, Mary, thank you. Stick with us here. And for Steve Witkoff, Jared Kushner in Hostage Square when they appeared here over the weekend, to huge cheers. And in fact, when they tried to share some of the credit with Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, there were boos, audible boos you could hear in Hostage Square here. They wanted to make sure that the credit, the people who had gathered here in the square at least, was felt by the Americans who applied pressure on their prime minister. Just a few more moments I'm expecting here from President El-Sisi before we hear from President Trump. But Ian Pannell, who's also with us here, our chief foreign correspondent. And Ian, when you look at these images today of the hostages reuniting with their families, in so many cases, sons hugging their mothers again, it's hard to overstate the role many of those moms themselves played in applying pressure, never giving up. 2 years straight, day after day. You're looking at the images right now up on the screen, the role that these mothers, these parents, these families played in trying to apply pressure on their government and on world leaders to bring these hostages home.
Yeah, you're absolutely right there. Now, I hadn't really thought about it that way, but it is the mother.
Let's listen to...
Well, thank you very much, and that was a great honor. I appreciate it very much, Mr. President, Mr. General, Mr. President. Great General, great President. Thank you very much. This is the day that people across the region and around the world have been working, striving, hoping, and praying for. They have done things over the last month that I think were really unthinkable. Nobody thought this could happen. With the historic agreement we've just signed, those prayers of millions have finally been answered. As you know, the hostages have been returned, and further work goes on having to do with the, sadly to say, bodies. Together we've achieved what everybody said was impossible. At long last, we have peace in the Middle East, and it's a very simple expression, peace in the Middle East, and we've heard it for many years, but nobody thought it could ever get there, and now we're there. I want to congratulate everybody sitting in these first few rows and standing behind me. I don't know why they chose to stand, but I promise I'll make it short, okay? We are not going to keep you standing for long. These are great leaders. After years of suffering and bloodshed, the war in Gaza is over. Humanitarian aid is now pouring in, including hundreds of truckloads of food, medical equipment, and other supplies, much of it paid for by people in this room. Civilians are returning to their homes. The hostages are reuniting. I mean, it's beautiful. I'm just watching it backstage. The level of love and sorrow, I've never seen anything like it. It's amazing when you see they haven't seen their mother, their father. They haven't seen them in such a long time, and they lived in a tunnel, a very little tunnel, very deep. And the level of love is just incredible. It's a beautiful thing to see. It's, in one sense, it's so horrible that it could have taken place, but in another sense, it's so beautiful to see a new and beautiful day is rising, and now the rebuilding begins. The rebuilding is maybe going to be the easiest part. I think we've done a lot of the hardest part because the rest comes together. We all know how to rebuild, and we know how to build better than anybody in the world. I want to express my tremendous gratitude to the Arab and Muslim nations who helped make this incredible breakthrough possible, and you really did. To President El-Sisi of Egypt, who is so generously hosting us today. And I want to thank you for the outstanding job your country is doing in so many different ways and for helping us so much with this peace agreement. I also want to thank the President for the escort of 6 fighter jets. Oh, we looked out the window, we said, I hope they're friendly, and they turned out to be very friendly. But we had 3 on each side, and they are beauties right out of the great, really American manufacturing hub. We make the greatest military equipment in the world. We have the strongest military in the world by far. And I knew exactly what those planes were, and I knew exactly how much you paid for those planes too. You paid a lot, but you got a pretty good deal. And they are great planes, and we just appreciate it. That was quite an escort in. That was very impressive. But Air Force One was really, it was covered with Egyptian desert just a few months ago. If you think about it, just a few months ago, it was Egyptian desert, and now it was just a few feet off our window. And it was a spectacular sight, and I appreciate it very much. Really, that was pretty good. You got our people by surprise. I don't know if they were thrilled right at the beginning, but they were thrilled as we sailed along very, very calmly and safely. And I'm deeply honored to receive from you, Egypt's highest state honor, the Order of the Nile. The Nile is so beautiful, so magnificent. It's such a beautiful title, the Order of the Nile. Thank you very much, Mr. President. Appreciate it. Great honor. I also want to give a very special thanks to the Emir of Qatar, a man who's outstanding. He's been a friend of mine for a long time, long before politics, and he's a fantastically respected man. His Highness Sheikh Tamim is respected by everybody. He's respected by everybody, and in the most positive way, not only because of power, because of his heart. He's got a tremendous heart, and he's a great leader, and his country loves him. Thank you very much for being here. It's an honor. Let me also express our condolences to the Qataris on the tragic car crash that claimed the lives of your cherished diplomats, some of whom were known by our people, and they were supposed to be incredible people. So please extend our sorrow and best wishes. That was tough. That was really tough. On this extraordinary occasion, I also want to give our sincere thanks to President Erdogan of Turkey. He's always there when I need him. He's such a tough guy. He is tough as you can be, but we love him. And when they have a problem with you, they always call me to handle it. And usually I come through. We just have a good relationship, and we have from the beginning. And so I want to thank you very much and say hello to your wife, your beautiful wife. And it's great to be with you. Always there. When I need him, he's always there. Thank you very much, Mr. President. And I also want to thank, I just spoke to him on the phone, His Royal Highness Crown Prince Mohammed, Saudi Arabia, a special friend of mine. Boy, he's come so long and so far, and he's doing a fantastic job for his country. And I want to just thank him. And His Highness Sheikh Mohammed of the United Arab Emirates is here. Where? He's here someplace. Well, he's not here, but he's here in spirit, I can tell you that. And he's been another one. He's been absolutely incredible, and we appreciate it very much. And His Majesty King Abdullah of Jordan, and thank you very much, King Abdul of Jordan. He's here. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much. and you really have been a great helper. We appreciate it. Appreciate it. Prime Minister Sharif of Pakistan, and also I have to say my favorite field marshal from Pakistan, who's not here, but the Prime Minister is here, and you're going to give his regards. Where are you? There you go. Thank you very much. Do you want to say what you said to me the other day? Come. Would you like to say what you said the other day? I think it was so nice. Please.
Thank you very much, my dear President Trump, my dear brother President Fathi al-Sisi of Egypt, Majesties, Highnesses, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, Assalamu alaikum, and a very good evening. Well, I would say today is one of the greatest days in contemporary history, because peace has been achieved after untiring efforts led by President Trump, who is genuinely a man of peace, who has relentlessly and untiringly worked throughout these months, day in and day out, to make this world a place to live with peace and prosperity. I would say that Pakistan had nominated President Donald Trump for Nobel Peace Prize for his outstanding, extraordinary contributions to first stop war between India and Pakistan, and then achieve ceasefire along with his very wonderful team. And today, again, I would like to nominate this great president for Nobel Peace Prize, because I genuinely feel that he is the most genuine and most wonderful candidate for Peace Prize, because he has brought not only peace in South Asia, saved millions of people, their lives. And today, here in Sharm el-Sheikh, achieving peace in Gaza is saving millions of lives in the Middle East. Mr. President, I would like to salute you for your exemplary leadership, visionary leadership. And I think that you are the man this world needed most at this point in time. World would always remember you as a man who did everything, went out of the way to stop 7 and today 8 wars. I would like to thank my very dear brother, Sheikh Tamim. He's Akh al-Shaqiq, who has really worked very hard along with others to achieve peace in this region. My very dear brother, President Tayyip Erdogan, His Majesty, King Abdullah, and of course, my very dear brother, Mohammed bin Zayed of UAE, and of course, my very dear brother, Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia. And he has also been very, very helpful and contributed very valuably in this wonderful peace process. Ladies and gentlemen, I wouldn't want to take more of your time. Suffice it to say, had it not been for this gentleman, not only, who knows, India and Pakistan are both nuclear powers. Had he not intervened along with his wonderful team, during those 4 days, the war could have escalated to a level. Who would have lived to tell what happened? And similarly, here in this part of the world, in the Middle East, Mr. President, your valuable contribution along with President Sisi. I think history will remember in golden words. I wouldn't say more, except God bless you. God give you long life to serve like this for all time to come. Thank you very much.
Oh, so beautiful. Thank you very much. Wow. Thank you very much.
Very kind.
Thank you. Wow, I didn't expect that. Let's go home. There's nothing more I have to say. Goodbye, everybody. That was really beautiful and beautifully delivered. Wow. Thank you very much. Also with us is President Prabowo, a very incredible man of Indonesia. President, come on. Great job. President Abbas of the Palestinian Authority. See, we have them all. We have them all. Great, great. It's good to have you. And so many others. I really have a list here. This first three rows and what's standing behind me, I don't know why they chose to stand, but that's there. They're going to be very famous tomorrow, all of them. We have the Arab League is represented by His Excellency, and thank you very much for being here. Thank you very much. We have Armenia, and Azerbaijan. That's a little war that we stopped. That's a little war. There they are. Look at them. They're sitting. When I met with them, it was in the Oval Office. They fought for like 31 years or some crazy number. And they had one sitting on that side of the Oval Office, one sitting. By the time we finished in 1 hour, they were both hugging each other. And now they're friends and they're getting along great. Look at it. So I want to thank you both. That's incredible. Really incredible. So you have Armenia and you have Bahrain, you have Canada. It's so great to have, in fact, the president called and he wanted to know if it's worthwhile. He knew exactly what it was. He knew the importance. Where's Canada, by the way? Where are you? Where are you? He knew the importance of this. He said, I want to be there. So many people have done that. They called. I mean, they heard about it. And these are not people that can do that very easily. They have pretty big schedules to put it on. The most powerful people. And I appreciate you being here very much, Mr. President. Fantastic. Fantastic. And Cyprus, Egypt, the European Union, it's a lot of countries. France, thank you very much, Emmanuel. I would imagine Emmanuel standing someplace behind me. Where is he? I can't believe it. You're taking a low-key approach today. He's my friend. That's great. Good job. Thank you very much, Emmanuel. Germany, the new Chancellor of Germany he's easy to spot because he's very tall. And he's very smart, and he's doing a fantastic job for his country. Appreciate it very much. And congratulations, a big election. That was a big one. That was going to change things. Greece, we have Greece. We have Hungary. Oh, Victor, where is Victor? Victor. We love Victor. Victor, I call him. You know, I put the little accent on it. You are fantastic, all right? I know a lot of people don't agree with me, but I'm the only one that matters. You are fantastic. He's a great leader. I endorsed him the last election he had, and he won by 28 points. So you're going to do even better this time. You have another election, and you're going to do great, and we appreciate it, and we're behind you 100%. That's Hungary. India is a great country with a very good friend of mine at the top, and he's just done a fantastic job. And I think that Pakistan and India are going to live very nicely together, right? That's not a very, they are. And they're two great, I'd say, leaders, great leaders as far as I'm concerned. Indonesia, we covered, and I just want to say that that's a big country, a powerful country. It does unbelievably well, and it's great to have you. Iraq, we have Iraq with lots of oil. They have so much oil, they don't know what to do with it. That's a big problem when you have
As you
so
can hear
much.
President Trump in Sharm el-Sheikh, Egypt, thanking the list of countries, the leaders who've gathered from across the Arab world and beyond. You can see Britain's Prime Minister standing behind the president there as well, Italy's Prime Minister as well. Leaders from all over the world signaling that they support President Trump's effort to try to continue with his 20-point plan here beyond what we witnessed today, the return of 20 remaining hostages still alive who've been held by Hamas in Gaza. Though the president knows himself, much of the hard work now comes after today. I want to go back to Ian Pannell just for a quick moment, Ian, because the images seen around the world today, those reunions, and I was asking you about the parents, the moms who never gave up, the families who kept the pressure on. They deserve enormous credit today as well.
Yeah, absolutely, David. And we've seen them here in Hostage Square. They've led protests outside of the Israeli parliament. They've traveled to the White House to meet President Trump. They've been to Congress. And they have had to endure the most unbelievable pain and hardship. There was one mother who just before the reunion said, I can finally be a mum again when I can hug my son. And it's that kind of power. They came together, the whole hostage and family movement, and they're still here tonight, still active, still lobbying for the remains of the deceased hostages to be returned. They're upset that only 4 of the bodies will have been released by the end of today, accusing Hamas of reneging on the deal. But they've been absolutely pivotal to this entire movement, keeping the attention of the world on the plight of the hostages. Again, taking the politics out of it, portraying the human side of the suffering that they've had to endure and their loved ones inside.
Our chief foreign correspondent, Ian Pannell, and our team throughout the region, I thank you all. And I thank you at home for watching as well. Our coverage continues on ABC News Live, abcnews.com. And of course, I'll be back with the entire team for World News Tonight. I'm David Muir in Tel Aviv. Until then, good day.
This has been a special report from ABC News.
David, thank you. Today, the skies are calm, the guns are silent, the sirens are still. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Kira Phillips. Those words from President Trump as history is written in the Middle East. President Trump surrounded by leaders from more than 20 countries addressing the world from Egypt after both sides signed the first phase of the peace agreement. Trump calling this moment a historic dawn for the region, saying his administration was able to achieve what everyone thought was impossible. Take a listen.
Those prayers of millions have finally been answered. As you know, the hostages have been returned, and further work goes on having to do with the, sadly to say, bodies. Together we've achieved what everybody said was impossible. Now the rebuilding begins. The rebuilding is maybe going to be the easiest part. I think we've done a lot of the hardest part because the rest comes together.
Families in Israel now celebrating as the last 20 living hostages are back home after 738 days in captivity. Those emotional and long-awaited reunions taking place in the early morning hours after Hamas handed over the remaining individuals to the Red Cross and into Israeli custody.
Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad, Baruch Ata Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, שהחיינו וקיימנו והגיענו לזמן הזה.
That joy clearly radiating across Israel and transcending the border, where families in Gaza are also celebrating the ceasefire. Nearly 2,000 Palestinian prisoners will be released in this first phase of the deal. Busloads of prisoners already brought to Gaza, creating gut-wrenching scenes like this of one man lifting a small child from the bus window and embracing the baby before safely lowering them back down. We have team coverage, but first in studio with me, Michael Ratney, former U.S. ambassador to Saudi Arabia, U.S. Consul General in Jerusalem, and former special envoy for Syria under President Obama. Ambassador, great to have you here.
Thanks, Kira.
Quite the day.
Indeed.
Just your overall impressions of this moment.
So really remarkable. Really, in just a few hours time span, we've seen these hostages released and reunited with their families. We've seen large numbers of Palestinian prisoners released. We've seen President Trump addressing the Knesset. And now we see President Trump in Egypt meeting with a huge number of global leaders. It's quite a moment. I think it's gratifying for almost everybody involved, certainly for the hostages and their families, certainly for the Gazans that finally have a moment of peace without airstrikes. Now it creates huge pressure for what comes next. These next phases will be, I think, even more difficult.
And when looking at this deal, Trump clearly getting a lot of praise from these world leaders. But the secret sauce, Jared Kushner?
Well, sure. I mean, this was a serious moment. It got close, and I think Jared Kushner is somebody who, although he hasn't had a formal role in the administration in this Trump term, he knows the file, and President Trump knows he knows the file, and regional leaders, whether the Israelis or the Palestinians or others, know when he walks in the room, he speaks for President Trump, and so I think that made a difference.
Stay with me, Ambassador. I want to bring you in on this conversation. Our chief White House correspondent, Mary Bruce, is in the region. She joins me now. Also, our chief foreign correspondent, Ian Pannell, along with our other chief foreign correspondent, James Longman. All three of you covering an incredible moment here that we have witnessed since the early morning hours in the United States. Ian, let's start with you.
I mean, an incredibly emotional day for many, many Israelis. And there must have been like 60 to 70,000 here. I've never seen Hostage Square so packed. This represented the end of a long 2-year nightmare. Now, of course, it isn't entirely closure. The hostages, the living hostages who return today, will have a long, difficult process ahead of them. They will have medical issues. There will be psychological issues that will have to be dealt with. But nevertheless, they were able to hold their loved ones once again in their arms. Now, we know that there was supposed to be 48 hostages. 20 of the living hostages came out today. There was supposed to be 28 deceased hostages, bodies released. Well, only 4 have been released. And the Family and Hostage Forum, which has been so pivotal in keeping the public's attention focused on the plight of their loved ones, is very unhappy about that, saying that Hamas has reneged on the deal. And the Israeli Defense Minister has also echoed those remarks. So we're not entirely through that crisis before we even begin to talk about phase 2. But it is remarkable what President Trump has managed to achieve here. And I think there are a couple of things. Firstly, we've talked a lot about his sheer force of will, in some senses ignoring the reality as most people understood it, and he's had the ability to almost create his own reality, but also that close alliance with so many key Gulf states. Remember, President Trump's ultimate aim here is for a wider Middle East peace settlement, an expansion of the Abraham Accords, and ultimately normalization between Israel and Saudi Arabia. Well, all of those countries, Qatar, the UAE, Saudi Arabia, and others, will have been telling President Trump and his negotiators that there will be no normalization until the war in Gaza is settled and reconstruction happens. So there has actually been pressure from both sides, but it's because of his relationship with them that he's been receptive to that and been able to push it through. But please spare a thought for the Palestinians. Of course, the Gazans are relieved that the guns have fallen silent, but we cannot overstate the level of destruction, the level of trauma, the level of disaster that has befallen people who are caught between Hamas and the Israeli Defense Forces. Already, hundreds of bodies underneath the rubble are starting to be recovered as Israeli hostage families await their loved ones. So many Gazans also waiting to find out what happened to their relatives. Where are they? Will they even ever find the bodies? Again, before you even begin to talk about reconstruction. And just one final thought. Once you get through all these stages of the peace plan, it still leaves the question of Palestinian statehood unresolved. And that at its essence, is what this conflict has always been about. The Palestinians say that they were thrown off their land during the establishment of the State of Israel, and they are entitled to share the land. And that is a conundrum that no one has ever quite resolved. As long as they dispute the land, there will be conflict. If they can agree to share the land, then perhaps this is the beginning of the end. Kira?
Ian, thank you so much. Mary Bruce, I'll bring you in on top of that. In addition to Palestinian statehood and that discussion, Trump was asked on Air Force One about an armed Hamas acting as a police force in Gaza. Trump said he's given the approval for that for a, quote, period of time.
Yeah, and that, I'm sure, is one thing that is being discussed behind closed doors in this summit, because, of course, how you secure Gaza is just one of the many, many questions that remains here. It is sort of the first question, though, because once you have security, then you can move to how to rebuild before you get to the question of who is going to govern going forward. And, of course, going back to Ian's very important point here, it is notable President Trump did not mention in any of his remarks here today, in either of his two major speeches, the future of a Palestinian state. Now, it is worth reminding that in his 20-point peace plan, it does state that this perhaps may pave the way for Palestinian statehood. But President Trump himself in recent days has not wanted to go that far. Speaking to us reporters at the White House just a few days ago, when asked whether he supports a two-state solution, he basically said he doesn't have a view on it, that he's going to go with whatever they decide to do. He's refusing to take sides on that. And that is going to be a major, if not the biggest, sticking point in all of this. But first, as we've been discussing, they have to get through the nuts and bolts of what comes next. The president, as we've been saying, has declared flatly that the war is over. That is a declaration that Prime Minister Netanyahu has yet to agree with. Certainly, President Trump deserves and is getting much deserved credit for this first phase. The president has been touting this, hailing it as a new day in the Middle East, referring to it essentially as a launching off point for future peace in the region. And of course, as Ian mentioned, he does have grander ambitions here, but you have to solve this problem first. And that is no easy task. And the president now meeting with these leaders who are going to have to somehow come up with a plan so that President Trump's declaration that the war is over can actually come to fruition. And there is a lot of questions. Who pays for this? Who devotes forces to this? Who's in there helping with reconstruction? What happens to Palestinians in Gaza who want and need to leave? Because, of course, as we've been mentioning, the devastation and destruction there is just traumatic. I mean, you have seen these images of so many racing back towards Gaza City, trying and struggling in many cases just to find the rubble of their homes. So the task ahead is incredibly daunting. President Trump here taking a much-deserved victory lap, but there are a lot of incredibly thorny issues still to come. Though the president seems that he will be at the center of these negotiations, he's going to be the chairman of this peace force. We have heard from his negotiators. Steve Witkoff says that he's already working on implementation. Jared Kushner's role remains a question, but of course he was incredibly instrumental in getting us to this point. So President Trump putting himself front and center in this effort to finally reach lasting peace. The question is, can he get there?
Mary, thank you. Let's bring in our James Longman, who has been talking about that all morning. James, talk to us about this Board of Peace, this body that will oversee the traditional governance of Gaza by a Palestinian committee. And also, you've been talking about this Palestinian movement right now. Is that something we are really seeing? Are we seeing a united Palestinian movement?
Well, not yet. I mean, at the moment, Palestinians in Gaza are picking up the pieces of what remains of their lives. So thinking about a political future at the moment will be well in the distance because it's still a struggle for survival. On that Board of Peace, I mean, let's just take you back to what we've just witnessed there at this extraordinary press conference, which at times, I think it's fair to say, was rather surreal. I think a highlight for me was when Donald Trump turned around to the Prime Minister of Pakistan and just asked him off the cuff to come and speak. And then later, when he was going through the list of world leaders, turned back and said, you're going to have peace with India. I mean, that's another, if you like, generational conflict. And the way in which Donald Trump talks about these issues, his manner, is incredibly disarming. And you get a glimpse of it when you see him talking to other world leaders, because so much of this usually goes on behind closed doors. His joke with Emmanuel Macron that he usually likes the limelight, but actually he was off to one side. Saw Keir Starmer, the British Prime Minister, burst into laughter behind him. So when you have these moments where you get an insight into how Donald Trump operates, you see how a deal like this might have happened. I mean, there aren't many other leaders who walk in to the Knesset, the Israeli parliament, to an enormous welcome, a warm welcome, rapturous applause, endless plaudits, and then an hour later walks into a room full of Arab and Muslim leaders and gets a similarly warm welcome. I mean, even President Sisi of Egypt, again, very close. It was the Egyptians who presented to the White House the Arab plan for Gaza, very different to what the White House had earlier suggested, where Palestinians would be forced to leave. There's an Arab reconstruction, which the Egyptians put forward together with those Gulf states. So it's Donald Trump's force of personality that seems to have got this particular deal over the line. But I will take some issue with one of the phrases that Donald Trump used today, which is where he said he thinks he's done the hardest part. That is, I mean, blatantly just not true. He's done a very difficult thing to bring all these people into one room together to have the conversation. But where the conversation leads, that will be the hardest part. And this is a conflict that, in his words, has gone on for decades, for generations. And that he wants it to end won't be enough. He wants the Russia-Ukraine war to end. He had a summit in Alaska and made it clear to Vladimir Putin that that's what he wanted. But we're yet to see the fruits of that conversation. This is so much more complex. There are so many more actors involved. One reason why we do have a reason for some hope, and we're looking at pictures there of him talking to the Indonesian leader, Muslim countries are going to be asked to step up here, to take responsibility, ownership perhaps in some way for the Palestinian situation and Gaza more broadly. The Indonesians perhaps putting up forces as part of this international stabilization force that Donald Trump has spoken about in this 20-point plan. But more than that, the actors involved in this are so numerous that the prospects for peace are that much smaller. But the reason why there's optimism is because if you just think about October 6th, Hezbollah in Lebanon was a very, very potent force. Assad in Syria was still there. The Iranian nuclear facilities were still intact. All this time later, and pretty much every one of Israel's main enemies in the region have been taken off the board. So is there the possibility that perhaps Hamas now has no future, has no choice but to enter into a negotiation which does see it disarm? That is the gamble. That is what the White House is hoping for. But we are a very long way from seeing that happen, and we're even further away from seeing a viable Palestinian state. Kira.
A gamble indeed. Our James Longman, thank you so much. And as you can imagine, in Hostage Square, a lot of rejoicing, a lot of parties, a lot of reuniting since early this morning, our time. It is a little more calm, a little more quiet, but filling up, no doubt, with more people as we continue to follow the news of this historic moment. The president wrapping up now his talk with more than 20 countries and the leaders from those countries surrounding him as he talked about this first phase of bringing the hostages home in this deal that he has come together and created with Jared Kushner and Steve Witkoff by his side. Let's bring in our retired Army Colonel Seth Crumrick. James was talking about phase two. It seems that is where a lot of the skepticism now rests. Seth, you have Hamas, which it doesn't look like has begun in any way, shape, or form to put down their arms, because they will be acting as somewhat of a pseudo police force now, as we heard the president of the United States say that he has agreed to that for a period of time. Your thoughts?
I think that when you look at what's happening, the speed that it's happening, it's important to understand that phase two, the center of gravity, the most important piece of this now, it's the Palestinian people and, frankly, their well-being. That strong investment that has to happen. And it has to happen from everyone that you saw on the stage and that everyone that President Trump talked about on the stage. One of the key differentials here, though, is that President Trump has put 9 years of investment in those personal relationships. This didn't just happen over the last year or 2 years. This has been a long-standing relationship build for during his first administration and then during the Biden administration, whether there were business dealings or other pieces, that trust was there. That trust won the day today to get a lot of world leaders that don't agree with each other together to take on this really complex issue. And to your question on phase two, that trust is going to take on an even heavier gravity. So the key here is going to be investing in the Palestinian people, keeping those Arab teams together to really focus on what will come next. Will there be a Palestinian state? What does that look like in time and space? When do you have to make those decisions? And to your point, Hamas is still out there. It will take years for them to demilitarize. You look at the IRA, it took 9 years to demilitarize the IRA. And don't forget, Iran is still in play. They are still out there. They are still a negative, bad actor that can affect the situation. So there's a lot ahead, and I agree. I think the hardest days are still ahead.
And on top of that, Mary Bruce, we are seeing these prisoners being released from custody in Israel. Do we know anything more about who they are and how that is going to be playing into all of this and the security within the region?
Yeah, well, certainly that is what was part of this deal in exchange for releasing the hostages, was that nearly 2,000 prisoners be released back to Gaza. You are seeing those rather emotional pictures of those buses pulling in. I think of that image of the man lifting up a baby and kissing him through the window. I keep thinking also how shocking it must be for them to see the state of Gaza. I would imagine that many of these prisoners have not been able to see much news coverage of this. And so for them to pull back into Gaza and see the conditions there are pretty astounding. Of course, as you've been discussing, one of the big questions here is, how does Hamas disarm? What guarantees will there be of that? What guarantees are there that Israel will not resume its campaign, especially given that Netanyahu has said, has not gone so far as to say that the war is over? There's a lot of trust that is involved here. And of course, to get to this point, President Trump made pretty clear that he had to be pretty tough on Netanyahu. He had to exert some extreme pressure on a key ally. And I think he noted that Bibi Netanyahu can be tough back, but there are going to be a lot more of those kinds of conversations. The president also, I think it's important to remember, in recent weeks, took steps that showed his credibility to Hamas. When you think about how critical the attack that Israel launched, those strikes on Hamas leaders in Qatar, I think at the time when that happened last month, so many thought that it was a step away from peace. In hindsight, it actually turned out to be a critical moment in actually leading to this point, because President Trump was infuriated. In fact, he went on Twitter, on social media, and said that he was very unhappy with Benjamin Netanyahu. And in response, I think by showing that he was taking a stand and being tough on Netanyahu, that he was reaching out to the leader of Qatar, the emir who President Trump has a long-standing relationship with, something he just mentioned in those remarks. President Trump then shortly after issuing assurances that Israel would never launch an attack like that again. He, of course, announced security guarantees for Qatar, NATO-like security guarantees for Qatar. And, of course, just 2 weeks ago when Benjamin Netanyahu was visiting the White House, he essentially forced Netanyahu to get on the phone and apologize to the emir of Qatar for that attack and promise that it won't happen again. And I think those are the kinds of things that Hamas was likely watching closely to see that the president is able to stand up to Benjamin Netanyahu. And, of course, the president tried to get Netanyahu a seat at the table today on his way over here. I'm told the president, once again, got Netanyahu on the phone. He forced him to speak to, got him connected to the Egyptian president, El-Sisi, their first conversation since the war began. The president essentially saying that Netanyahu should be invited to the table today at this summit. El-Sisi invited him. Netanyahu later declined, citing the Jewish holiday. But it shows, I think, the role that the president will likely play as these negotiations go on, trying to at least open these lines of communications and get people talking, because, of course, it is notable. You have these 20 countries here. You have this tremendous buy-in from the region, everyone hoping that this will lead to lasting peace despite the thorny issues. But the two main players are not at the table. Now, Mahmoud Abbas Abbas, the Palestinian president, is there, but of course you don't have representatives of Hamas and you don't have Netanyahu at the table. So they have to come up with solutions here and then get the principals on board. And there are a lot of just nuts and bolts issues here. You know, how do you get aid into the people of Gaza, into the Palestinians who are living in just complete destruction and destitution? How do you go about creating a kind of security force with the hopes that Hamas will ultimately disarm, as is outlined in the 20-point plan? How do you rebuild? Who pays for it? Who brings in that equipment? Who's providing forces? I mean, the list goes on and on and on. All these things that have to be worked out. But for today, a huge moment for President Trump, a huge moment of joy, celebration, jubilation, a collective sigh of relief for so many in this country and around the world and in Gaza. And I think a lot of cautious optimism about where this may go, Kira.
Let's follow up with you, Ambassador, on what Mary just said. The issue of pressure. Okay, clearly a lot of pressure was put on Egypt, Qatar, Turkey. We saw all those leaders represented there behind the president with the big Peace 2025 moment. And he did point to Abbas in the crowd. You know, he wasn't up there, but he did point to Mahmoud Abbas. But Mary brings up such a good point. Still, we're not seeing Netanyahu, and we're not seeing a representative from Hamas. What does that tell you about where we are right now?
So there was a lot of pressure on Netanyahu from Trump. I think Trump took him well out of his comfort zone to get as far as this ceasefire. Trump has extraordinary leverage with Netanyahu, and that leverage is because Trump is just so popular in Israel. It's more popular than Netanyahu, more popular than probably any Israeli politician, but he's been reluctant to use it. He used that leverage to get to this ceasefire, and as some of your correspondents have noted, Netanyahu hasn't totally publicly embraced all of the rhetoric that Trump has talked about: an end to the conflict, an end to peace, a ceasefire.
Should we be nervous about that?
Well, I think it was inevitable in a sense, because on the one hand, Netanyahu is not going to say no to Trump. Netanyahu now has the hostages out, and he doesn't want to do anything to mess that up. But on the other hand, he has this extremely radical coalition that he's balancing as well that doesn't like many of these things. They don't like the idea of a ceasefire while Hamas is still in some way, shape, or form intact in Gaza. He doesn't like the idea, they don't like the idea of releasing all of these Palestinian prisoners back to Gaza and the West Bank. They don't like any of it. And so even while Netanyahu is going to put the best face on it for Trump, he also has to balance his political coalition at home. So he's facing pressure from a lot of different directions.
Let's bring in our James Longman, who's been covering that side of things for us for a long period of time out there in the region. James, this radical coalition the ambassador is referring to, also those prisoners that are being released, you know, do we know anything more about them and how that's going to impact how all of this flushes out in phase 2? And also we've received reporting as well from sources to our Matt Gutman here that Hamas is already looking at regrouping.
Yeah, I mean, first of all, on those prisoners, the deal was that nearly 2,000 prisoners would be released. Hamas was pushing for certain names. There were individuals who have been convicted of killing Israelis, those who took part in the October 7th attack. A lot of this very unpopular. Of course, it's unpopular with Israelis more broadly. But time and time again, the hostage families said whatever it takes. It didn't matter to them. Whatever needed to happen, they needed their loved ones home. And that is part of the reason why those prisoners have been released. There's also a deal to release for every body, every dead Israeli captive that is released, 15 bodies of dead Palestinians who've died whilst in Israeli detention are also released. So there's this ongoing exchange happening in the background. On that regrouping of Hamas, well, we had a call for mobilization just a couple of days ago from Hamas. It's reported some 7,000 fighters, young men called up to serve to secure the parts of Gaza that the IDF had withdrawn from. Now, there is lawlessness in Gaza. There are gangs that are not affiliated to Hamas, that are armed, that do operate. And we actually heard from Donald Trump, who was asked directly, I think, on the plane over here from Israel about this idea that Hamas might still be kind of an armed force for the moment. And he said, well, that's part of the deal. There's a transitional moment. You expect, he said, that there'd be some kind of police force and it would be manned by Hamas. He said more than 60,000 people have been killed there. They've got to regroup in some way. So, look, this is to be expected. But what happens after this transitional period, that is when things get sticky. And the trick here will be for people to try to focus on what's most important, which is peace, rather than listen to the extremes. There are all kinds of scenarios that might destabilize this. There are people inside Gaza who might decide to start firing rockets at Israelis. There could be another terror attack on the streets of Jerusalem. There could be more calls in the Israeli Knesset and from parts of the more extreme. More settlement building, particularly in a very sensitive area between East Jerusalem and the rest of the West Bank, in order to cut off the possibility of there ever being a Palestinian state and a future capital of a Palestinian state. So these extremist voices will always be there, but the trick to peace, and if you listen to someone like Tony Blair, who is there today, and he was one of the architects of the 1998 Good Friday Agreement that brought the conflict in Northern Ireland to an end, is that you have to involve all parties, but try to avoid the noise on the extremes. David Trimble, who was a very, very important part of that, he said, everyone knows what peace looks like. And if you take the Good Friday Agreement as an example, Stormont was an earlier draft of the peace agreement that wouldn't get signed for some years. It was pretty much exactly the same deal. It's just you needed the right people in the right place at the right time with trust. And Donald Trump is hoping that he's one of those people. Trust is the big issue. There's been an enormous breakdown in trust, even if there ever was at the beginning of all this. These last 2 years of war have been devastating. The lives of so many hostages and their families blighted by this, more than 900 soldiers from the IDF killed inside Gaza, and of course, the more than 60,000 Palestinians who've been killed, and the many more tens of thousands who've lost absolutely everything. So when trust is at an all-time low, how do you ignore the noises on the extremes and focus on peace? That is the challenge. That's what Donald Trump, the gauntlet that he's laid down. We'll see if it's possible. Kira.
Let's get back to that word trust. James, thank you. Let's go to Christian Cordero. Clearly, there was trust in President Trump. There was trust in Jared Kushner. And there was also trust in Special Envoy Steve Witkoff.
Really for the past several months, Kira, when this administration came into play, when it came to these larger peace talks, we saw Special Envoy Steve Witkoff travel to the region several times, have these discussions with various world leaders, Arab leaders, and Israeli leaders alike. And then more recently, we saw the president's son-in-law, Jared Kushner, enter the picture. And as we have noted, right, bringing a little bit more of that business negotiation tactic into the conversations themselves. And when it comes to Steve Witkoff, one thing that stood out that was really interesting today is he said that they are going to stay dug into the region. So as you heard James very eloquently lay out how challenging this is moving forward, that the hardest parts are in fact still ahead. The path forward has not yet fully been tested. Although there is a plan in place and there are many parts of today that are worth celebrating, there are key crucial moments that feel very fragile. And one thing Steve Witkoff said today is that they are going to stay in the region. We are going to quote unquote be here quite a bit. That's at the direction of the president. And that's probably going to be one of the most important phases here is what the special envoy said. Kira, we'll see how it all plays out.
We sure will. And Seth, I want to bring you back as a retired Army colonel and just talk to you about the U.S. role here, U.S. troops, and when exactly we are going to see that presence, what the role will be as phase one has already been put into the chute and we start to enter phase two.
Absolutely. When you think about the U.S.'s role, the best way to describe it is the Humanitarian Coordination Center that they're putting together. It's part humanitarian expertise and it's part logistics. And no one does logistics like the U.S. military does. So you're in good hands with that framework. The key, though, is going to be the International Stabilization Force. When we think about all of those leaders that we saw that are going to have to, pony up and provide soldiers to walk the streets, to provide those resources coming in, that's where you're going to see those friction points. That's where that trust and personal relationships are going to be coming in together. And look, there's been some historical friction out there. We think back to not too long ago with Saudi Arabia and UAE and their disastrous, efforts in Yemen against the Houthis. There's still some scar tissue there, and all of these leaders have to respond, and they've got to report back to their domestic populations. They're accountable. So it's going to be very difficult to balance all those things. So besides the resourcing and the logistics, there is going to be delicate, very culturally attuned leadership that's going to be required from some significant U.S. military and U.S. diplomats to make sure that phase 2 can go. But the number one thing to watch is this: the investment into the Palestinians' well-being. You put your money where your mouth is. Action matters, not words. Show me how you're taking care of the Palestinian people, whether it's social services, reconstruction, and I'll show you if success is possible.
Seth, thank you. I also want to bring in our presidential historian, Mark Updegrove. Now, Mark, Trump has compared his envoy, Special Envoy Steve Witkoff, actually to Henry Kissinger. He made that comparison today in terms of both of their impact on foreign policy. What do you make of that?
Well, Kissinger was certainly important in Richard Nixon's efforts to strike peace in the Middle East. He was his emissary, and there was what was called at the time shuttle diplomacy. That was Henry Kissinger getting on a plane, going into the Middle East, and going through these hard negotiations with different powers. And that's what Witkoff and, to a large extent, Jared Kushner did here. You mentioned it earlier in the broadcast, Kira, that Jared Kushner was certainly the secret sauce in